The story begins with a retired Marine named Frank Castle. He's in his apartment, pushing his mind through an incredibly brutal training routine. He trains so intensely that his hands start bleeding. We then learn that Frank is currently one of the most wanted men in the country because he has single-handedly wiped out more than 20 criminal gangs. The reason goes back to the day Frank took his wife, his son, and his daughter to an amusement park. They were enjoying their time together when 3 different gangs arrived to buy drugs from a dealer. Suddenly, a dispute broke out between the gangs, and they opened fire on each other. Tragically, Frank's family was caught in the crossfire, and all of them were killed right in front of him. The trauma completely destroyed Frank's mental state. He tracked down all 3 gangs and eliminated every last one of them to avenge his family. But even after getting revenge for his wife and children, Frank couldn't stop. He continued hunting down gangs and criminals, killing them to protect innocent people from their crimes. He became known as the Punisher. Since then, the police have been searching for him and have placed him on the list of the world's most dangerous fugitives. To avoid being recognized, Frank grows out his beard and decides to hide in a poor neighborhood overrun by criminals known as the Sicilian District, where the police would never think to look for him. After finishing his training, Frank stands in front of photos of the members of the 3 gangs and angrily tears every one of them apart. Meanwhile, every news outlet is talking about the Sicilian District, describing it as a haven for criminal gangs. Every day, gangs terrorize the neighborhood, creating chaos and robbing local businesses. A short time later, we see a homeless man feeding his dog on the street. Suddenly, 4 young men attack him and strike him in the head. One of them grabs the dog before deciding to get rid of it by throwing it in front of a moving car. The homeless man breaks down in tears after watching his dog die. In his despair, he wishes that the Punisher would return and take revenge for him. At that moment, Frank is sitting alone, imagining his fellow Marines talking to him. They keep reminding him that he killed all 3 gangs and avenged his family, yet he still hasn't found peace. No matter what he does, he can't stop crying because he can't bear the loss of his wife and children. Frank breaks down and tells his friend Kurt that he can't live without his family. He says he can't move on from the pain, and he begs Kurt to kill him and put an end to the suffering he goes through every single day. Kurt tells him that he needs to repent for his sins if he ever wants to find peace. He explains that Frank has committed countless sins by killing criminals and gang members, and that's why he continues to suffer instead of finding relief. Frank is convinced by his words. He gathers every weapon he owns, places them all inside a storage box, locks it, takes the key, and leaves his apartment. As he walks through the streets, no one recognizes him or realizes that he's actually the Punisher, the man who has become every criminal gang's worst nightmare. He stops at a cafe to buy a cup of coffee. While he's there, he watches the news reporting on him. The broadcast reveals that a gang called the Gnucci family is hunting the Punisher because he killed the gang's leader, along with 3 of his sons. While Frank is standing in line to pay for his coffee, the cafe owner's daughter notices him. She immediately recognizes him as the Punisher because she had seen him before he grew out his beard. However, she doesn't tell anyone who he is because she sees him as a hero who protects innocent people. Frank leaves the cafe and continues walking through the streets. He completely ignores the gangs and criminals assaulting people around him because he has decided never to kill again and wants to live in peace. He eventually visits the cemetery to see the graves of his wife and children. There, he places the key to the weapons box in front of their graves and tells his wife that he has stopped hunting criminals in the hope that it would finally bring him peace. But nothing has changed. He is still emotionally broken and filled with guilt because he couldn't protect her or their children. After that, Frank pulls out his handgun and points it at his own head. But at that moment, memories of his wife and 2 children come rushing back. He imagines his daughter standing in front of him, telling him that she loves him and saying goodbye. When the vision disappears, Frank becomes overwhelmed with emotion. He takes it as a sign from God that he isn't meant to die. He walks away, imagining his friend Kurt speaking to him once again. Kurt tells him that God will never forgive him unless he truly repents from the heart and stops killing. He explains that this won't happen until Frank finally lets go of the grief over his wife and children. Suddenly, Frank notices a black car parked nearby. He immediately feels like someone is watching him, so he quickly leaves the area and heads back toward his apartment. Just then, an elderly woman sitting in a wheelchair calls out to him. She introduces herself as Eliana and tells him that she was the one sitting in the black car watching him. She reveals that she knows he's the Punisher. Eliana tells Frank that her husband was the head of the Gnucci crime family, One day, a man broke into their mansion and killed him, then he murdered her eldest son, who was a police officer. After that, he tracked down her second son and killed him while he was staying at a hotel with his wife and child. But the killer didn't stop there. He even murdered her youngest son right in front of her. It soon becomes clear that the man she's talking about is Frank himself. Frank killed her husband and all of her sons because they were involved in illegal weapons trafficking and were responsible for the deaths of countless innocent people. Eliana then stands up from her wheelchair, walks toward Frank, and tells him that he's a ruthless murderer who deserves to die for destroying her family. She reveals that she's now the head of the Gnucci family and has already ordered her men to kill him. She warns Frank to be ready because at exactly 6:45, her gang will storm his apartment and execute him. After they deliver his body to her, she'll burn it in front of everyone to avenge the family he slaughtered without mercy. After saying everything she wanted to say, Eliana walks away. Frank simply ignores her threats. He isn't afraid of her at all. He returns to his apartment where he imagines his friend Karen talking to him. Karen scolds him for isolating himself inside his apartment while gangs and criminals continue attacking innocent people in the streets. She reminds him that he's a hero, that people still need him, and that it's his responsibility to protect them from criminals. Karen urges him to leave the past behind, become the Punisher once again, and never allow the Gnucci family to kill him. Frank finally makes up his mind. He snaps out of his thoughts after hearing someone outside his apartment shouting for him to come out so they can kill him. Frank looks through the peephole and sees the man smashing his neighbor's door, trying to provoke him into coming outside. The gang breaks into the apartment and attacks his neighbor. Frank hesitates, unsure whether he should help her or not. Suddenly, the gang pours gasoline under his apartment door. The fuel reaches Frank's feet, and they set it on fire. Just then, he hears his neighbor's son screaming. Without wasting another second, Frank kicks the door open, storms into the apartment, and wipes out every gang member inside. He then goes after the man, holding his neighbor hostage, and kills him with a knife. His neighbor and her son thank him, but before Frank can react, another gang member sneaks up behind him and smashes him with a baseball bat. Frank loses his temper, grabs the bat from him, and starts taking them down one after another. Then, one of the gang members throws a stick of dynamite into the apartment. Frank immediately kicks it back outside, slams the door shut, and pushes a heavy wardrobe against it to shield himself from the blast. The moment the dynamite explodes, Frank rushes to the balcony to escape. But when he looks outside, he realizes that the Gnucci gang has surrounded the entire neighborhood. Their men are everywhere, breaking into people's homes, beating innocent residents, and killing anyone in their way. Frank starts picking them off one by one. Thanks to his incredible marksmanship, he drops them with ease until he finally runs out of ammunition. He grabs another weapon from one of the dead gang members and decides to head to the rooftop before they can hurt more innocent people inside the building. On his way upstairs, he eliminates every gunman who gets in his way until he finally reaches the roof. From there, he plans to take out the rest of the gang, but he notices more gunmen coming onto the rooftop through two different entrances. Frank starts taking them down one after another. Then one of them manages to shove him off the building. Fortunately, Frank lands on the roof of a nearby building and survives the fall without any serious injuries. When he looks down at the street, he sees Eliana standing there with her bodyguard, waiting for him to die so she can take his body and burn it. Suddenly, another gunman charges toward Frank. Frank shoots him dead with his pistol, but he quickly realizes that two more men are closing in on him. Since he's out of ammunition, he has no choice but to jump off the building. Frank lands in the street unharmed. Seeing that he's still alive, Eliana panics and quickly flees with her bodyguard. Frank starts chasing after her, but two gang members intercept him and try to beat him. Frank easily overpowers them and takes them both down. He then spots Eliana escaping. Frank decides to go after her because she's the one responsible for everything that's happened. She's the one who sent her gang to kill him. Just then, he hears the cafe owner's daughter screaming. He sees three gang members brutally attacking her father, so he immediately sprints toward them. Frank draws his pistol and kills all three men attacking the cafe owner. He then rushes inside the cafe where more gang members attack him. Frank fights them off and kills them, but another man suddenly charges at him with an axe. Frank overpowers him and buries the axe in his shoulder. He then then searches for the cafe owner's daughter to make sure she's safe. He finds her hiding with her mother, both of them completely terrified. But before Frank can reach them, a massive man attacks him from behind and stabs him in the shoulder with a knife. The giant keeps beating him until Frank grabs a nearby pen and repeatedly stabs the man with it until he finally brings him down. The cafe owner's wife thanks Frank for saving them. Her daughter then runs over, hugs him, and tells him that she knew all along he was the Punisher. When her father comes over to make sure they're safe, his daughter hugs him and tells him that the Punisher saved her. Overwhelmed with relief that she's still alive, the cafe owner embraces his daughter. Watching the emotional reunion, Frank is deeply moved and decides it's time to leave. But before he can walk away, the little girl asks him to wait. She hands him a drawing of a flower and tells him that she made it especially for him. She had planned to give it to him the next time he came to the cafe for coffee, just like he does every day. She smiles at him as her way of saying thank you. Frank quietly walks away. As he makes his way through the streets, he notices that all the criminals have disappeared after learning that he single-handedly wiped out the entire Gnucci gang. He walks proudly through the neighborhood, feeling that for the first time in a long while, he's finally beginning to heal after protecting innocent people. A little later, Frank returns to the cemetery to visit the graves of his wife and children. He places the flower drawing in front of his daughter's grave and says that every time he looks at the cafe owner's daughter, she reminds him of his own little girl. He admits that after taking revenge on the 3 gangs who murdered his wife and daughter, he went through the darkest period of his life. But he finally realizes one important truth: revenge alone can never bring him peace. Only now does he truly understand his purpose. Frank then picks up the key to the weapons box from in front of his wife's grave and promises his family that he'll continue protecting innocent people. He vows to hunt down every gang and every criminal until the world becomes a safer place where good people can finally live in peace. The next day, an elderly man is walking down the street with his wife. The same bully who killed the homeless man's dog starts following them, carrying a baseball bat and preparing to attack the elderly couple. Before he can make his move, Frank steps in. Now wearing the Punisher outfit once again, Frank knocks the thug to the ground. He pulls out a knife, holds it in front of him, and warns him that he'll kill him if he ever hurts another innocent person. Frank decides to spare him this time, but then the homeless man calls out to Frank and tells him what this thug did to his dog. As the homeless man is speaking, the thug suddenly takes off running in an attempt to escape. Frank throws a knife, hitting him in the leg and bringing him down. Frank walks over, points his gun at him, then looks at the homeless man and asks whether he wants the thug dead. The homeless man says yes. He tells Frank that he wants revenge for what the thug did to his dog. Without hesitation, Frank pulls the trigger and kills him. From that moment on, Frank dedicates himself to wiping out every criminal and every gang in the neighborhood so innocent people can finally live in safety. And that's where the movie ends.